She didn't notice it at first. Nothing felt wrong. There were no arguments, no tension, no warning signs. In fact, everything felt exactly how she always imagined it would feel. Calm, safe, comfortable. He listened, really listened. Not the way most people do, waiting for their turn to speak, but paying attention, remembering details, bringing up things she had mentioned days ago. And for the first time in a long time, she felt understood, not judged, not ignored, not dismissed, just understood. And that feeling is powerful, because when someone makes you feel seen, you open up, you trust, you lower your guard, and slowly, without realizing it, you start giving them access. Access to your thoughts, your emotions, your patterns. And that's where it begins, not with control, but with connection, because the most dangerous form of manipulation doesn't feel dangerous in the beginning. It feels like something you've been looking for, like something you've been missing, like someone who finally gets you. But what most people don't realize is this: manipulation is not about control in the beginning. It's about information, understanding how you think, what affects you, what triggers you, what makes you feel safe. Because once someone understands that, they don't need to control you directly. They can influence you, and influence is much more powerful. Part 1. The perfect connection. At the beginning, everything felt effortless. Conversations flowed naturally. Hours felt like minutes. He always knew what to say, always agreed at the right moments, always supported her perspective, and slowly, she began to feel something rare, a sense of certainty. This feels right. But what she didn't realize was that he wasn't just connecting with her, he was mirroring her, adapting, adjusting, becoming exactly what she needed. And while that feels like compatibility, it can also be strategy. Because when someone becomes everything you want, you stop questioning who they really are. Part 2. The first signs. The change didn't happen suddenly. There was no moment where everything shifted, just small things, almost invisible. A comment here, a reaction there. You're overthinking it. That's not what I meant. You're too sensitive sometimes. Each one by itself seemed harmless, even normal, but together they started doing something subtle. They created doubt. Not about him, about her. Part 3. The confusion begins. Then something strange started happening. Every time she tried to express something that genuinely bothered her, the conversation would change direction. She would start with clarity. She would say, "That hurt me." Simple, direct, honest. But instead of being heard, she would find herself explaining, justifying, defending. And somehow, at the end of the conversation, she wasn't sure anymore. Not about what happened, but about how she felt. Part 4. The shift. And this is where the real shift happens. Because the conversation is no longer about what was done. It becomes about how you reacted, your tone, your words, your timing. And once that happens, you are no longer holding someone accountable. You are trying to prove that your reaction was valid, and that changes everything, because now you are in defense mode. Part 5. Guilt enters. Then came something even more powerful. Guilt, not loud, not aggressive, quiet, subtle. He would say things like, "I didn't expect that from you," or "I thought you understood me better." And suddenly, she felt something heavy, responsibility, not for what happened, but for how he felt. And that's when the pattern deepened, because once you feel responsible, you start trying to fix things, even when you didn't break them. Part 6. Internal change over time. The biggest change didn't happen in the relationship, it happened inside her. She started speaking less, thinking more, filtering her words, avoiding certain topics, avoiding certain reactions, and slowly, without realizing it, she stopped being herself. She wasn't expressing anymore. She was managing his reactions, managing his emotions, managing the situation. Part 7. Self-doubt. And then came the most dangerous part, self-doubt. At the beginning, she was sure, confident, clear, but now everything felt uncertain. She started asking herself, maybe I misunderstood, maybe I overreacted, maybe it's me. And once that thought appears, everything changes, because now you don't trust your perception anymore. Part 8. The loop and the pattern continued. Over and over, the same structure, the same emotional outcome. She would speak, he would shift, she would feel guilty, she would apologize, and everything would reset. But each time, it became easier for him and harder for her. Part 9. The realization. The moment everything changed was quiet, not dramatic, not explosive, just awareness. She noticed something, not a moment, a pattern. Every conversation ended the same way. Every time, she felt the same thing, and suddenly, it became clear. This wasn't random. This wasn't misunderstanding. This was control. Part 10. The truth. He wasn't reacting. He wasn't confused. He wasn't just bad at communication. He was influencing, using emotions, using doubt. And once she saw it clearly, using guilt, something inside her shifted. The moment she started changing at first, she didn't notice the change because it didn't feel like change. It felt like adjustment, like growth, like learning how to communicate better. She told herself, maybe I just need to be more patient. Maybe I need to choose my words better. Maybe I should try to understand him more. And that's how it begins, not with control, but with adaptation. Because when someone slowly pushes you to adjust your behavior, you don't feel controlled, you feel responsible. The silent pressure. There was something else she couldn't explain. Silence, not normal silence, not peaceful silence, a different kind. He would pull away, stop responding the same way, become distant, cold. And she would feel it instantly, that tension, that discomfort, that need to fix something, even when she didn't know what went wrong. So she would reach out, try to smooth things over, apologize. Not because she knew she was wrong, but because she wanted things to go back to normal. And without realizing it, she was being trained. Over time, the pattern became automatic. She didn't even need a full conversation anymore. A look, a tone, a small reaction was enough to make her pause, to make her adjust, to make her rethink what she was about to say. And that's when control becomes complete, not when someone controls your actions directly, but when you start controlling yourself. The loss of clarity. There was a time when she trusted herself. Her thoughts were clear, her feelings made sense, her reactions were natural. But now, everything felt different. She would replay conversations in her mind, again and again, trying to understand what happened, trying to figure out where she went wrong, trying to fix something that didn't need fixing. And the more she tried to understand, the more confused she became. The emotional exhaustion. It wasn't just confusion anymore. It was exhaustion, mental, emotional, constant, because every conversation felt like a test. Every word felt like it had consequences. Every reaction felt like it could start something. So she became careful, too careful, and being that careful is exhausting. The turning point. The turning point didn't come from a big moment. It came from repetition. The same feeling, the same confusion, the same outcome, again and again and again. Until one day, she stopped focusing on the situation and started seeing the pattern. And once you see the pattern, everything changes. The real shift for the first time. She didn't react immediately. She didn't explain. She didn't defend herself. She just observed. And that silence felt different, not heavy, not uncomfortable, clear. And that clarity showed her something she hadn't seen before. It wasn't about what was happening. It was about how it was always happening. Understanding the control. He didn't need to force anything. He didn't need to raise his voice. He didn't need to dominate, because he had something more powerful: influence. He influenced how she felt, and that influenced how she behaved, and that influenced how she responded, and that's how control works at a psychological level. Breaking the cycle. The moment she understood that, something changed. Not in him, in her. She stopped trying to fix everything, stopped trying to explain everything, stopped trying to carry responsibility for everything, and when she stopped, the dynamic started breaking. Because manipulation depends on participation, and once you stop participating, it loses strength. And that's when she understood something powerful. It was never about her being too sensitive. It was never about her overreacting. It was never about her being the problem. It was about control, subtle, emotional, psychological control. Manipulation doesn't always look like control. Sometimes it looks like care, like attention, like understanding. But if every conversation leaves you confused, if you're always the one apologizing, if you feel like you're slowly losing yourself, that's not connection, that's control. And the moment you recognize it, you take your power back.